I want to welcome in everybody. We will be going over the Summer Wells case.
Hey everyone, listening to this new update about Summer Wells, I will love you listening to the end. And in the next 2 hours, I will drop another fresh continuity of this episode so as for you don't miss any update. And I can vividly tell you that this is a fresh update so shocking. I'm Joseph by name. It was a warm Tuesday in June 2021, in the quiet hills of Rogersville, Tennessee. On Ben Hill Road, a 5-year-old girl with blonde hair and blue eyes was playing outside with her family. Her name was Summer Moon Utah Wells. She was helping her mother and grandmother plant flowers, a simple, happy task for a little girl. This simple scene is the last known moment of Summer's life before she vanished into thin air. Summer went inside her home to play with her toys. It was around 6 p.m. on June 15th. Her mother, Candace Wells, called downstairs for her a short time later. When Summer did not answer, which Candace said was unusual, she went down to check. The basement bedroom was empty. Summer was gone. In that instant, a family's world was shattered, and a mystery began that would grip a community and frustrate investigators for years. Summer Wells, just 5 years old, had disappeared from her own home without a trace. The response was immediate and massive. The Hawkins County Sheriff's Office began a desperate search. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, or TBI, quickly got involved. Because of Summer's young age and the strange circumstances, they issued an Amber Alert across the state of Tennessee. This alert remains active to this day. Police officers, firefighters, and hundreds of volunteers from the community combed the dense woods around the Wells property. They searched through the night, using flashlights to look under bushes and in ravines. They brought in dogs trained to find missing people. They even searched from the air, hoping to spot a flash of pink from the shirt Summer was last seen wearing. But they found nothing. No sign of Summer. No clue as to which way she might have gone. At a press conference, a sheriff's deputy described Summer to the public. She was about 3 feet tall and weighed around 40 pounds. She was last seen wearing a pink shirt and gray pants, and she might have been barefoot. Her picture was plastered everywhere, on television news, on roadside billboards, and on thousands of flyers shared online. The whole region was looking for one little girl. The Wells family home sat on a large, 11-acre property on a secluded road. The land was hilly and covered with thick trees. Behind the house was a steep hill leading down into more woods. This geography became central to the mystery. Summer's parents, Don and Candace Wells, spoke to the media in those first days. They were distraught and pleading for her safe return. They told a story that planted a seed in the public's mind, the idea of a stranger. Don Wells said he believed someone had sneaked onto their property and abducted Summer. He thought she might have been taken down the steep hill behind their home to a waiting car. Candace echoed this fear, saying she believed Summer was taken off the property in a vehicle. Police released information about a potential clue. They had been told about a pickup truck seen in the area around the time Summer vanished. The description was vague, a red or maroon Toyota truck with ladders on the back. But without a license plate or a clearer sighting, it was a needle in a haystack. Investigators admitted that even if they found the truck, they weren't sure it would be connected. Another neighbor came forward with a chilling memory. She reported that she and her children heard a scream about an hour before Summer was reported missing. The neighbor said she wished every day that she hadn't dismissed the sound at the time. Yet, like the truck, this lead did not bring investigators any closer to finding Summer. As the ground searches turned up empty, the investigation widened. Agents from the FBI joined the TBI and the local sheriff's office. They began digging into the lives of those around Summer, following procedure in any major case. They interviewed family, friends, and neighbors. Publicly, the sheriff stated that everyone was a person of interest. However, Summer's parents were never named as suspects. In fact, news reports confirmed that both Don and Candace Wells took and passed polygraph tests administered by the TBI. The family's pain was compounded by another loss. The Tennessee Department of Children's Services became involved after Summer's disappearance. They decided to remove Summer's 3 older brothers from the home and place them in foster care. Don Wells was furious about this. In an emotional interview, he said, "We were stripped away from all our kids. All our kids have been kidnapped from us by DCS." This separation added a layer of bitterness and controversy to the family's public struggle. Weeks turned into months. The active search for Summer was scaled back, but the investigation never stopped. The TBI kept a dedicated team on the case. They continued to receive tips from the public, hoping one would finally break the case open. But every lead seemed to fade away. The trail was growing cold. The mystery of how a little girl could vanish from her own home in the early evening remained locked tight. The public was left with two haunting possibilities. As stated by a top TBI official, they did not have the evidence to know if Summer was abducted or if she simply walked away from home and got lost. For long years passed. For most people, life moved on. But for the investigators and for a community that remembered, the case of Summer Wells was a wound that would not heal. Her Amber Alert was still active. Her picture, now years out of date, was still on missing children's websites. Then, in the summer of 2023, the TBI tried something to jog memories. They released a new picture of Summer. But this was not a photograph from 2021. It was an age progression image created by a forensic artist. It showed what experts believe Summer might look like as a 7-year-old. The release of this image was a clear message: we have not forgotten. We are still looking. The little girl who vanished at age 5 was growing up somewhere in the public's imagination, but not in her parents' home. The case was quiet but not closed. Then, in late 2025, something happened. A new lead came in. It was specific enough that it demanded immediate attention. Agents from the TBI and detectives from the Hawkins County Sheriff's Office packed their gear and headed to a new location. They were not going back to Ben Hill Road. They were driving to an address about 10 miles away, in the town of Greeneville. Their destination was a block on Van Hill Road. The exact nature of the tip was a closely guarded secret. Was it a new witness? A piece of evidence? No one would say. On Thursday, November 13th, 2025, investigators converged on this spot. They spent the day there, doing the meticulous work of a follow-up investigation. News cameras were not allowed close. The TBI spokesperson would only give a bare-bones statement. They were following an investigative lead. They could not say what, if anything, was found. The only thing they confirmed was that the investigation into the disappearance of Summer Wells remained, as it had for over 1,600 days. Active and ongoing. For a case defined by silence and dead ends, even this small activity was significant. It was a spark of hope in a long, dark tunnel. It proved that someone, somewhere, was still thinking about Summer Wells. It proved that law enforcement was still chasing answers. The public reaction was a mix of desperate hope and weary skepticism. On social media, people who had followed the case for years shared the news. "I hope this is a sign that Summer will soon be found," wrote one person on a missing persons page. Others analyzed the new location. One commenter pointed out that the area in Greeneville had quite a few offenders living nearby, suggesting a possible connection. Another simply prayed, "Please, Lord, find this child safe and unharmed." But many wondered aloud why the TBI would announce a search if it didn't yield a major discovery. "That's why they say they have a lead without first checking out to see if it went anywhere," questioned one person online. The Wells family, who had endured years of public scrutiny and harassment, chose to stay quiet this time. Through social media, they denied any requests for comment on the new activity. They had learned that speaking out often brought more pain than progress. So, the search on Van Hill Road ended. The investigators packed up and left. The public was told nothing more. The silence returned, but it felt different now. It was the silence of waiting. What was the lead? Did it bring them closer to Summer, or was it another heartbreaking false path? The authorities were not saying. The only official word was that the work continues. And so, the mystery persists. A little girl went inside to play and never came out. The questions hang in the Tennessee air, as heavy now as they were on that first evening. Where is Summer Wells? Citations continue in episode 2.